in the Divinity School. And we are excited. You all are helping us kind of launch these new series of initiatives that we're focused on building the capacity of faith-based organizations to and nonprofit organizations to work with faith-based institutions to increase the work and advocacy around addressing stigma around HIV. So Marcus, if you okay, you are recording, great. And so we reviewed each one of your applications. We thought that you all were amazing, executive directors, people who have been doing meaningful work in your respective fields, in your respective communities. And so, part of the vision for the Learning It Together cohort is for us to work with you all on ways to build your capacity to expand the scope of your work even more. The idea is for us to help elevate the work that you're doing, bring it to a national level or even a statewide and national level, for us to connect you with strategic partners, and for you all, a lot of the curriculum that we pulled together and the speakers that we have invited, including Bishop O.C. Allen, who is on the call with us today. Many of them have already made a national mark and have already kind of done a lot of the work to address stigma around HIV in faith communities on a national level. And so they're going to be imparting their wisdom and expertise to help you all to think about how you can integrate it into your work. And I guess the other kind of focus of this is, we've uploaded, I'm sure many of you have already joined the Google Classroom and have started reviewing some of the materials that we've already uploaded to the Google Classroom. We've outlined those as a way for you to use them to do a reflection and analysis of your organization, your policies, your structure, and the programming, so that you can use that to improve your own work. And so we'll be meeting quarterly. I know that's not a lot of time for us to be meeting each, it's only quarterly, but we know that you all are already kind of up and doing the work yourselves. So this is really for us to kind of create a conversation kind of community for us to be able to help you build your capacity to do this work on a national level. So if you have not accepted the invitation to join the Google Classroom and our Google group, please do so, because we have material in there for you for each workshop. So I want to take a little bit of time for you all to introduce yourselves. So we will start actually with Marcus Hawley, since he's a program administrator for the Faith Coordinating Center. Marcus, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Marcus Hawley, and I'm the program administrator here at the Faith Coordinating Center. I will be your primary contact for the LIT cohort. Welcome. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm pretty sure you've all received emails from me. And again, for the invitations, please let me know. You can direct message me on this platform, and I can email you the link after we're finished as well. So welcome and thank you. Nice to meet you all.
All right, thank you. So we're gonna, and he didn't talk about his background in HIV work, but both Marcus and I have been working in HIV clinical trial engagement, community engagement, and also app development technology for the past, 11 years on different projects. So I worked at UNC, both of us worked at UNC, he worked at Duke, I worked at, at Wake Forest, Duke, Centers for AIDS Research, et cetera. And my background also includes working with faith-based organizations to increase their capacity to do health ministries, to launch health ministries, expand their health ministries, as well as addressing stigma and educating the community about HIV cure clinical trials and vaccines, et cetera. So and that's both been nationally and internationally. So excited to be here and be able to bring that to you all as well. We'll have Vaughn Alvarez introduce yourself. Looks like Vaughn's having some technical difficulties.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm just here in
Okay.
support of Bishop Allen, just making sure.
Oh, okay. Great. Will Francis.
Sure. So my name is Pastor Will Francis. I'm a lead practitioner, Lives and Souls Missional Church, as well as founder, CEO of the Hub here in Atlanta. Excited to be part of this cohort. We've been working in the HIV space now since 2009. Probably doing a little bit of everything from testing and prevention to advocacy, and now moving into the care spectrum. So excited to be here, and
where
looking
did you
forward
say
to
you're located?
Atlanta, Georgia. So,
Great.
so good to see you all, and looking forward to growing with you.
Thank you. Andre Antenor.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andre Antenor. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I've been working in the HIV field since 2007. So that's like 14 years. So, and I've been a case manager, a disease intervention specialist, linkage, and now I'm the president of Positive Assistance. So my background, I have a bachelor degree in theology, and I'm very active in the Orlando community, and I'm part of the First Baptist of Orlando. Very proud of being an usher there and making an impact in the community. So I'm glad to be part of the learning it together cohort, so I can share my experience with you guys. And it's good to see all of you all.
Wonderful. Ty Link.
Hello, my name is Ty Link. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm the program director of the peer program at Nashville Cares. I also consult with the Vanderbilt Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. And I've been working in the HIV field since 2004. Also work with a grant, was just awarded from CFAR with Meharry and Vanderbilt. So I'm very interested in sharing my experience and learning everything that I can. Thank you.
I'm getting excited just hearing y'all talk about your, there's so many connections as I'm making in my brain. So this is good. I'm excited. All right, Reverend Rob Newellis Newton.
I'm Rob Newells Newton. I serve on the ministerial staff at the Imani Community Church in Oakland, California, where I worked with Reverend Ed Sanders to start an East Bay HIV Faith Collaborative that lasted for a few years. I moved to Atlanta last summer to become the director of national programs for Black AIDS Institute. And so I'm really trying to figure out how I can use my new position to work with faith communities nationally. And I've been living with HIV for 16 years.
Wonderful, living and thriving. Mark Cassidy.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited by the prospects of us being together. I started HIV work in about 1997. For the last few years, I've been the executive director of Triad Health Project, AIDS Service Agency in Greensboro, North Carolina. For 22 years prior to that, I was running a house of hospitality, radical hospitality, for folks who are HIV positive family members and all of that. So the house itself was faith-based, all faiths welcome, no faiths welcome. And I'm excited to be here with y'all. I haven't seen my friend Will Francis in quite a while, but I like the beard, Will. Yeah, good to be with y'all.
Great. Gabriela Rodriguez.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriela Rodriguez. I use she, her, and ella pronouns. I'm here in Orlando, Florida. I am the executive director of a program or an initiative called Q Latinx. We are a grassroots organization that focuses towards the empowerment of our LGBTQ community here, Latinx, knowing that race runs throughout like colorism and how that conversation happens within our Latinx community, because we are all shades of colors. So also bringing that faith-based conversation también as far as how it intersects in our conversations, because we know that people of color, we are very faith-based, but also understanding that there is LGBTQ trauma and how we bring those two together. So I'm excited to be here. I also serve as a case manager here in Orlando, Florida. So I hope to add that into the mix as well.
Wonderful. Reverend Mission.
So I think he's having some technical difficulties. He just told me that he couldn't hear anything. So
Oh, okay.
we're gonna try to.
And is that Reverend Lamont Lewis, or is that?
Yeah, I think that is
Okay.
Reverend Lamont Lewis.
Okay. Robin Whitehead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Whitehead. I actually have been involved in HIV work since 1999. Got my foot started in the field in Boston, Massachusetts. I relocated to Atlanta, Georgia, where I too have done a lot of work with Reverend Will Francis over the most recent years, but enjoying every step of the way. I am the founder and director of a nonprofit, SELA, serving everyone living with and affected by HIV. Here in Atlanta, where we provide transitional housing assistance, HIV outreach, prevention, and education, as well as linkage to care services. It's a relatively new organization, but again, having a background with doing HIV work with the faith community since 1999, providing them with technical assistance and capacity development support in developing their own in-house HIV support ministries, but not on a level where I would say that I have the I don't want to say education, because I have the education and the experience, but I don't have the formal education that I can say that we're sitting here talking with someone with master's in public health or something to that effect. But I do definitely have the heart and the passion to do the work and have been sustaining it since 1999. I'm a member of World Changers Church International, where we do have an HIV ministry under that mega ministry with Creflo Dollar Ministries, which started with me coming and relocating here in 2008. And it provides linkage and support services to its members and to the community, whether it's testing events, making sure that we have a presence at back to school events, to health fairs and things of that nature when we're doing outreach within the community, but being able to provide members of our congregation as well as those in the community with linkage, because we don't want the responsibilities of our congregations to everything to fall on the congregations in regards to what they need to do, but being able to have those resources and network with the existing services in the community. And that's what I want to be able to provide to other congregations as they develop their own HIV ministries.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This is a powerful group. And it seems like there's already some great connections that have been made and can be made. So we are we're gonna get started. So we are excited to introduce our speaker, one of our speakers for today, Bishop O.C. Allen. He is the founder, I believe. Are you the founder? The founder of the Vision Community Church and Vision Community Foundation. He has ministries across the South in several states and has a strong relationship with Gilead as well as other national organizations, and has been doing this work for a long time. He's very well respected in the community, and we are excited for him to talk about just the work that he's been able to do and build up, and how we can learn from him. Bishop Allen.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. I appreciate you and Marcus for the opportunity to talk with you all. As I was listening, much like Dr. Matthews, I am just overjoyed to see the experience and the capacity and all of the expertise that you all bring to this initiative, to this project, to what we are all trying to do, even in our respective cities. You know, those of us who, and you, maybe you didn't have to grow up in the church to know this or to hear this, but you know, it says iron sharpeneth iron. And so the fact that we are together, we sharpen each other, and it is absolutely a privilege and an honor to be sharpened by you all and to hopefully provide some thoughts about how to move forward. If you hear something in the background, of course, as soon as I got on this call, my lawn service just showed up. Of course, that's when they would show up, is right when we have to have a conversation. And so if you hear something, that's what that is. But I'm delighted to be here. Listen, what I was asked to do was talk a little bit about what we do. Again, I am Bishop O.C. Allen. I am the senior pastor of the Vision Cathedral of Atlanta and executive director of Vision Community Foundation. I'm also a new commissioner here with the Human Relations Commission here in Atlanta, and do a whole lot, have been involved in a whole lot. I'm a part of a whole lot, and I won't go through all of that, but it is a privilege to see the evolution of HIV work. And I'm just excited. 16 years ago, we started the church, and a year after we started the church, we saw that there was a need to create another entity connected to the church that wasn't limited by the church. And we created the Vision Community Foundation. A lot of the motivation behind that was because at the time, and unfortunately still, I was doing more eulogies than I can count. It was astounding, the number of eulogies that I was having to write and preach, the number of families that I was having to encounter in a way that very early on in my pastoral journey, I had to contend with. When you start off in ministry, in Christian ministry as a pastor, as a young pastor, you, or at least I did not anticipate the level of pastoral care that would need to be provided specifically to young Black gay men. I say that as a Black same-gender loving man who is married to a wonderful man. We started ministry right out from the gate, authentically in our truth. And as a result of that, a lot of our congregation, or the majority of the people that showed up in the room, were Black LGBTQI folk. Back then, it wasn't as many alphabets as there are now.
One message.
You say that again?
It was an error. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. All right. And so it was quite an experience. I would say I got my feet wet early as it relates to pastoral care. You know, it's one thing to start our organizations and to have a great vision and to build sort of the organizational work that's required to sustain a nonprofit, to sustain a program. But the human element of this work is why we do what we do. But for many of us, it is a personal journey. It's been a personal journey. And that was really how we ended up creating the Vision Community Foundation. It has been a journey. It has been a process. And I don't claim to know everything, but I have some thoughts about how we've been able to do the work that we've been called to do. Honestly, our work is driven by our pillars. And I don't want to bore you with them, but I do want to mention them, that we really have essentially three pillars that our work is built on. The first one is very obvious, very, very obvious, and that is social justice. And when I say our work, I am talking about not only our nonprofit, the Vision Community Foundation, I am also talking about the church, our church, Vision Cathedral of Atlanta. And as you know, I'm a presiding bishop. So I pastor pastors of inclusive congregations around this country. And obviously, the thing that should be the driver is social justice. I always tell people I strive to be a prophetic instigator, meaning within the prophetic tradition of the Black church, that the Black church tradition has always been rooted in speaking truth to power, no matter who was in power, who was out of power, who was elected, who was not elected, who won, who lost, who was in charge, who was not in charge, that our role was and is to be social justice agents. And I think social justice has become a trend, but we don't speak trends to power. We speak truth to power. And any organization, any nonprofit, any ministry, and when I say ministry, it could be mosque, it could be temple, it could be church, whatever it is, when we do this work, we cannot forget the very basic tenet of the work, and that is social justice. And let me just say, I think sometimes we forget even the definition of social justice, and that is, social justice in terms of distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges in this society, making sure that there is equity as it relates to the distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges in a society. And so our organizations, even if they are focused on HIV and public health, our organizations are always or should always be rooted in this notion of us addressing the distribution of wealth and opportunities and privileges within the societies that we're in. Again, social justice is not a trend. We don't speak trends to power. Doesn't matter who's in power. We speak truth to power. However, I will say that, speaking truth to power is not easy at all. Ask Reverend Jeremiah Wright, ask Dr. King, ask Malcolm X, ask any number of leaders and any number of people in the past who had courage, that speaking truth to power is not an easy task, but it is our responsibility. That's our first pillar, social justice. Our second pillar, and before I get to my second pillar, I do want to say that it relates to the church, that early on in our ministry, it was important to make a distinction as a Black congregation that there is a difference between the Black church and Black people going to church. I will say that again, that there is a big difference from our perspective. This is what we taught very early on, that there was a difference between the Black church and Black people going to church. And should I say, to make it more inclusive, that there's a difference between people going to church and people being the church, or people doing ministry and people being ministry, or going to ministry and being ministry. That was a very early tenet, so that this was not about us coming to worship or gathering ourselves together from a religious perspective, that this was about us getting the fuel that we needed to go out and serve. And that service was our goal. So social justice, a very major pillar of what we do. The second thing is the healing justice. That we teach healing justice, that we believe in healing justice. That healing justice means that wholeness is a right. It's something we strive for, but it is a right, particularly with people that have been traumatized because of homophobia or sexism or oppression. It is critical. You wouldn't be surprised, because this is the work you do. It is critical to understand just how many people come into our spaces that don't believe they deserve to be whole, that don't believe they deserve wholeness, that they don't believe that they deserve equity. And we've taught that God wants you to be whole, and it is your right. And that wholeness
¿Qué me meto, Jesse? ¿Qué me meto, diatre?
is about your mind, body, and soul. Wholeness is about economics. Wholeness is social. Wholeness is spiritual. Wholeness is theological. Wholeness is physical health. Wholeness is mental health. Wholeness is sexual health. Very early on in our church, we part of the reason why we launched the foundation, the Vision Community Foundation, was because we understood we needed several conduits and avenues and spaces to talk about sexual health. That even while we were an inclusive community, an inclusive church, that people still brought their histories and insecurities and challenges and their religious perspectives around sexuality to the church. And so while it may not have been difficult for me to talk about sexuality in an inclusive way and to unpack sexuality and to teach sexuality, the people still had their traumas and their challenges around sexuality. And I've said this, every single thing I learned as a child about sex, I learned in the church. Unfortunately, it was not a healthy sexuality. Most people, when we talk about God and the church, you know, we leave out the anatomy, we leave out the obvious things. And so having a trajectory and a strategy in the ministry and through our nonprofit that address sexual health, also address stigma. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, just talking about sexual health addresses stigmas around sexuality. And we can't be afraid to do that. So social justice and healing justice, and then spiritual justice. Spiritual justice was the third pillar. I used to always say, you know, you can't, you need to live in your truth so you don't die in a lie. You must live in your truth so you don't die in a lie. That to be healthy is to be your authentic self, whatever that is. And from our vantage point, it was to be authentically your spiritual self, because really we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And teaching it from that vantage point, I believe help people to address their issues. The last things I want to say are really to talk about sort of our strategies. And I really have 3 strategies, and I have a few lessons learned that I want to give you that really helped us. And these, you know, I don't have time to go in depth or to unpack these things. If you have questions, please let me know. But our first strategy was obviously congregational engagement. Even when we started the foundation, that did not necessarily mean that people understood what the purpose of the foundation was and what it would do. And it took a lot of work to engage people. And I found out early on, you can have a really big vision. You know, you're trying to save the city, or you're trying to heal the city, or you're trying to work with the city. When we forget the first step, work with your block, work with the network you have, work with the people you know, work with the people in your house. You know, so we had this really huge vision to address HIV, to address stigma, to address linkages to care, to make sure that people got into care, all of that. People were adherent. But, you know, that vision wouldn't matter if we weren't addressing the people in the room and the people immediately before ministry to the congregation is ministry to the leadership and training the leaders. And at that time, before our church really grew, it was just a few of us. And so I learned that, you know, you really do have to engage the network around you. I believe that God wants courageous congregations, but it starts with reaching the people around you, and not just reaching them, you know, from our lens. It wasn't just educating people on HIV. It was also giving people a theology around prevention. That's our job. We do theology. We do theological work. But it was also working through that. It's easy to, I wouldn't say it's easy to have a health ministry, but you know, having a health ministry is one thing. And that's, I believe every church should have a health ministry. Making sure that people understand the theology of health is a completely different thing. And so if you have a health ministry, you know, you obviously you're all running nonprofits. Don't forget your clients and the people that walk in the room don't just walk in the room with their experiences around public health. They're walking in the room with their theology. They're walking in their room with how they feel God feels about them and how they feel about whatever God or whatever spirituality they have. And many of us who may have, if you have an evangelical Christian church, you cannot assume that everybody who walks in the room has an evangelical theology, or that if people come into your room and you have an outreach to Muslims, that everybody who comes in the room has an Islamic theology around health. It is incumbent upon us to, first of all, address our own theology. And I'll get to that in a minute. But, you know, really think through, how do we give people a framework around, and we're talking about church, we're talking about ministry, we're talking about faith-based work. Where do people think? What do people feel? Where are people as it relates to theology? That's the only way that I feel we can get people to a place of wholeness. So congregational engagement, I learned that I had to preach sermons and sermon series and Bible studies and have conversations with our congregation, theological conversations that pointed them in a direction of wholeness and health, and not just provide the program. What good is it for me to tell someone to take a pill and they don't feel good about themselves? Or what good is it for me to tell someone to take a pill and they don't believe that God loves them and cares for them? What good is that? I have not helped in a degree that I can without that. Then we created our program, but the term that the program is named after really was our second strategy, and that was prevention from the pulpit, because prevention starts in the pulpit. I think we understand this, we get that, but it's a lot of work to get pastors and faith leaders and imams and priests and practitioners of faith to really understand that prevention is not just a program, that it really starts with the leader. It starts with you, and it starts with your preaching and your teaching and your messaging. And so as an example, I decided to do a sermon series on healing, but as a part of it, I had our creative team build a 6-foot pill bottle, a 6-foot pill bottle. And we put it on the stage and left it up there for weeks. And I preached about healing. Now, you know, as people of faith, many people of faith, a lot of us believe in healing. Most of us believe in healing. But I was trying to drive this point because earlier I said that I was doing a lot of eulogies. And so people were not, it didn't seem like people were able to connect adherence to their medication with healing. People could not connect it. And so I had to stand up and not only talk about it, I needed to give people the visual. And I will tell you, I was surprised at the number of people that really had to work through the argument that I was trying to make, that healing was in the pill bottle. Because in my particular context, people, you know, we want to pray and, you know, the miracle comes down and things are different. And do we believe that that happens? I believe that that can happen. But I was trying to drive a deeper point, and that is that adherence and healing are the same thing. Adherence and wholeness are the same thing. And out of that, we were able to create a program. Now, I think the main point to that is that as you all are running programs, and it's something I've learned over the years, don't stop being innovative. Don't stop being innovative. I will say that, please be innovative. Be innovative. Your approaches to public health, your approach to the conversation, your approach to prevention, your interventions. Don't be afraid to be innovative and to be creative and to be out of the box, and to do things that other people aren't doing, and things organizationally and in terms of your vision that might appear different. Don't be afraid to be innovative. We've got to move beyond dead strategies and find strategies that are innovative and creative. That's how we started our program. Then, of course, community collaboration. Now, the community collaboration for us, so these three, the strategies that have helped us, you know, congregational engagement, prevention from the pulpit, and then community collaboration. This community collaboration component was really tough for us because I decided that the best way to get to the community was to go to the community and not wait for the community to come to us. And so we as a faith-based organization, myself as a bishop, we as a church decided to collaborate with Atlanta Black Gay Pride and party promoters, and not just, you know, do prevention efforts in their space, but to be a true partner. And we've been able to do that. Early on, it was not easy. Early on, it was tough because people did not see how a faith-based organization could collaborate with party promoters, basically. We serve the same communities. That was my perspective. So I'm a partner to anybody that is trying to serve our community, and whether or not, you know, what those partners' focuses might be, and it may not be my focus, but I had to engage the community the best way that I could. And out of that has birthed a number of things. I Elevate, Pure Heat Community Festival, a number of different things that we are doing. And so community collaboration was critical. Early on, we were waiting really for the community to come to us. And we did, you know, I realized, wait a minute, I have to get out there in the community and be seen. The last thing I was supposed to mention is lessons learned. You know, by the way, if you ever have a preacher do a presentation, you have to forgive the preacher for being preachy. So forgive me, Reverend Francis knows what I'm talking about. I'm trying to do a lecture, but I feel preachy, so just excuse me. I got to do it the way I know how. And so my assignment was also to talk about lessons learned. And there are some lessons that I have learned. These are sound bites, if you will. I put them down into some little sound bites, but I want you to think about it. The first thing is that, you know, sometimes you will fight the people you're fighting for. Sometimes you will fight the people you're fighting for. Why do I say that? I say that because if you're not aware of the territory, if you're not aware of what comes with the territory, if you're not aware of the landscape, you will burn out easily. And it is easy to burn out doing this level of work, providing services and programs for people to the degree that sometimes You will be fought. Sometimes you will be fought by the entities that you're trying to get resources from, but sometimes you will have challenges with the people you're trying to get the resources to. But that is a part of the task. You can't have the, and let me add this, you can't have the title if you can't hold the towel. You can't have the title. What do I mean? If you're not ready to serve, and when I say serve, I mean get down into the dirt and into the mud and into the problem and into the challenge of this, then this may not be something you want to do. You got to be in this for the long haul. And I know you all are, and I feel like I'm talking to the choir, but I just want to inspire you, if I might, for just a moment, to let you know that this is a part of the work. And so, it's oftentimes incredibly difficult to get funding and resources. We are so appreciative of Gilead. But I will also say that that's not where the challenge always comes from. Sometimes it comes from the people you're trying to serve. That comes with it. The other thing is, understand the power of historical trauma. I don't think we are oftentimes as aware of how trauma manifests itself. I in other trainings, I've called it anticipated trauma. You got to anticipate the trauma. The communities that we serve, not only do they have the trauma that comes from the disparities of health, there's trauma almost in our DNA, particularly those of us who come from communities that have suffered from colonial and Western and American oppression in all of its forms, whether it's slavery or Jim Crow or sexism, homophobia, transphobia. That's trauma, or just the rejection of your family. You can be heterosexual and have been completely rejected from your family. That's trauma. That is absolutely trauma. And so when we're serving our communities, we need to have a good grasp of at least understanding what trauma does that becomes stigma, that becomes these phobias that we've had to contend with. We must understand the power of historical trauma. The other thing I have learned is that the healing and wholeness of the client are most effective when the leader is in the process of their own healing and wholeness. I will say that again, that the healing and wholeness of the people we serve is most effective when we are in the process of being healed and whole. Hurt leaders hurt people. Traumatized leaders traumatize people. Depressed leaders depress people. And if there's anything I can offer up to you all, it is this term that we are using a lot, but I'm not sure we get it, and that's called self-care. You can't do this work and not have a strategy, a personal strategy for self-care, because you are serving trauma-informed communities. This past week, I talked to my congregation about making peace with your past and getting healed and getting help and getting support. That was not just to the congregation, that was to leadership. Because if you don't get healed of our own stuff, it comes out in the work that we do. Wounded leaders wound people. Get your rest, get your support so that you can run this race. The very last thing I will say is the limitations you accept are the organizations you build. The limitations you accept are the organizations the organizations you build. The limitations we accept are the organizations we build. And so have a really big vision, have a strategic plan, but be relentless, be absolutely limitless in your vision. I mean, absolutely relentless, because the limitations that you accept are the organizations and the programs that you build. You have no limits. You can do absolutely anything. Take it from me, who has spent many years, much like you, building a vision, building an organization, building a work that has required so much time that it can be overwhelming and exhausting. Don't give up the fight. You have no limitations. Sometimes you'll have to reorganize, refresh. You'll have to press the delete button. Sometimes you have to press the shift button. Sometimes you have to press the return button. Do what you got to do, but no limits. All right, that's all I got for you. If you have any questions, I will answer them. If you have any thoughts or questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Reverend or Bishop OC. We definitely appreciate that. So yeah, now is the time if you have any questions for Bishop in his presentation. Those last 4 points, if you will, were really great. I actually wrote all of those down. Those were really good. So yeah, does anybody have any questions or anything?
So I have a question. This is Will Francis. Again, great stuff, Bishop, as always. But I am curious that how do you manage, I guess, your leaders' expectations that may get scared by the big vision, right? They sort of get lost in it sometimes. So how do you sort of manage that with your leaders? I mean, God has given me, I think, a gigantic vision, and I'm trying to pull back a little bit on sharing it all with my leaders because I think they sometimes get a little nervous.
Yes.
But how do you manage that?
I think, first of all, you've been given the vision. You've got to give it out in small bites and pieces sometimes, because it's like babies, not to assume that leaders are babies, but you can't give a certain child of a certain age a steak. You got to cut it up a little bit. It's the whole steak. It's still the steak, but you got to cut it up. I think the first thing is really knowing strategically how to lay out or cast your vision in a way that people can get it step by step. That's the first thing. I think you give people the broad vision, and then you give people the steps of how you're going to get there. But I think the more of a philosophical perspective is the vision was given to you. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to be the only one who gets it in totality and in the fullness of it, because you're the leader. And actually, the leaders behind you, the leaders who are walking with you, will take cues from you. I gave an illustration to someone the other day. The pioneers who went west, they didn't know it would be called California or Nevada or Arizona or Texas or Montana. They didn't know that. They had no idea. They took a risk, and many of them died on the way. And really, they had to tell people, follow me. And there were a lot of people that did. There are a lot of people that didn't. I think in general, there has to be an acceptance that I am the one who understands the totality of this. People are following me, and people will get it gradually. Some people will not. Some people, this is what is most difficult. Some people are to be with me in stages and phases, and they will get only enough for that stage and phase. You know, if I expect them to go with me all the way, I will be incredibly disappointed. You know, my job is to cut down the trees, to lay down the tracks, to move the rocks, you know, and pray that the people behind me will be inspired as they see me, but to know that no matter what length they go with me, that everyone will play their role in helping me get to where I need to go. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
So I think to piggyback on that, just to hear your response to Will, doing this primarily with the faith community, you know, sometimes we don't know the final steps. Like you're saying, we didn't know that in the West was going to be California. But at the same time, you know that there's a calling, that there is a vision, that there's a purpose and a direction.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're doing this from a faith perspective, that there's a purpose or a calling from God.
Yeah.
But we don't have all the steps. And we expect people to believe in us enough in our vision to support us in these phases. But we don't want to lose folks along the way. And if we do, and some fall off and some take, you know, portions of it that we may have, you know, given the details of, and, you know, they go on and they add and they build Arizona, you know, then we're thankful for Arizona. And but we want to get to California. We want to get to the other places. But I think it's just really making sure and having that confidence that when we hear a direction or given some steps, that we don't always have all of the, you know, the details in between, and not get discouraged during those times when we don't have all the details.
Yeah, I will say that for me, let me tell you personally how God has handled me, or what I believe has been my process. You know, God, I will see what I think is the end result, but my instructions usually are around the first step. And it's almost like I've learned, can I be trusted with the first step? With the very first one. Now that's for me. I'm not even talking about my leaders. It's, can I be trusted to take this first step? And most times we, you know, Dr. King talks about the staircase. Most of us will see us sitting on the couch in the room at the top of the steps. You know, we completely miss the staircase. And that even the staircase, getting to the top of the staircase, is one step at a time. And life does not allow sometimes for you to skip steps. You skip a step, you have to go back a few more steps. That's just the way my life has been kind of situated. So what I'm learning is, you give people, going back to Reverend Francis' question, you give people the vision, but it is better to be a great sergeant than a poor general. What do I mean by that? It is great. It is better to do two things phenomenally than absolutely do 10 things horribly, you know? So you lay out, this is where we're going. We're going to the West, but we gotta first get from Atlanta to Birmingham. You know, we gotta, so letting the leaders know this is what we will focus on. This is what we'll, you know, the big step for us as a faith-based organization was, I want to get everybody adherent to their medication. Anybody who's on medication for HIV, that, you know, how do we do that? Now, that's such a big, like, how does that even work? I realized that the first step was to teach people about healing and wholeness. Then I can get to habits, you know? habits. How do you do something on it? What is a daily routine? Before I get to daily routine, I got to make people feel like they are worthy of doing something on a daily basis, and that there is progress in that.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, Bishop OC, for that word, for your presentation. Again, those last few nuggets. I'll just say for the people who still have questions, could they email you, or
Certainly.
what's your, if you can drop your contact information or whatnot in the chat, that would be great. And I believe you may be doing a couple of other things with the center. So just keep a lookout for it. He will be a part of our virtual training series. And I believe you all received an email about the rest of the virtual trainings that we'll have that are not required for you all, but we strongly recommend that if you can participate in those, please do. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Bishop, so much for your time. It's been great. So yeah. And right before we move on to our next presenter, she is already in, Miss Camry Wilborn. We will do a poll. We forgot to do that right before Bishop went on, but I'll go ahead and launch the poll. And if you could just take a few moments to read through and just answer. It's nothing really hard, but just answer those the best you can, and then we'll move on with the next presentation. So I'll go ahead and launch that now. And how are we feeling as far as a break? Do we need maybe a 3 to 5 minute break? Would that be helpful right now? Yes, no, yes. Okay. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. It looks like we've majority of people have already answered the poll. So we'll take a 5-minute break and be back here at 3:05. And we will be getting started with Ms. Wilborn. All right.
Hi, Camry. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Matthews. How's it going?
Doing well. See, do you need anything from us in regards to slides or?
Yeah, I have my slides, so just the ability to share my screen would be great.
Okay, sure. Let me see if I can do that. And so the format has been kind of in with Bishop Allen didn't have slides, so he kind of talked about his experience, and then they had an open conversation and questions. Okay. This is a group of executives. They all run their own organizations. They're in different states. So we have some in Florida, in Georgia, North Carolina. I think we even have some folks in like Indiana. Okay. Yeah, so it's people all over the country. And, some of them have some statewide experience, but, our goal is to help them elevate their work so that they are able to move it to a national level. and doing kind of, and so I thought that the idea of being able to think about community academic partnerships and how they leverage that to expand the scope of their work would be good. And I've heard that you have wonderful expertise in that area. And we're all focusing on faith and HIV. So, you know, faith-based, working with faith-based institutions, faith-based organizations. Some of them are faith leaders, but some of them are nonprofit organizations who want to work with faith institutions.
Perfect. Thank you for that context.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have some slides. We'll go through those and then we can have a conversation if folks have questions about particular ideas or partnerships that they're thinking about with higher ed institutions. We can workshop those or answer any questions they might have.
Great, thank you.
I'm not allowed to share my screen.
Oh, yeah, I got caught up talking to you about that.
You're good, no worries.
Let me see it. If I can do it. I think Marcus is gonna have to do it. Oh wait, no, I'm a co-host. Allow.
Are y'all back on campus in person yet?
Yes.
Okay. It was my first day back today. It's been weird.
I worked in the office all week and it's exhausting.
It's weird,
so
right?
funny how much energy it takes out of you to work in the office versus at home.
Yeah.
I think Marcus is gonna have to do it because it looks like I don't have privileges to give you that.
Perfect.
What do we need?
Marcus, if you could allow her to share her screen.
Oh yeah. Oh, I made you. Okay.
I don't know. It wouldn't let me do it.
I didn't know why. Yeah, so I'll make you a co-host, and you should be able to share. Correct? Yeah. Whoops. There you go. Let me know if you can.
I can. Thank you.
Okay. So it's 3:05. So Camry, you can take it away.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Camry Wilborn. I serve as the Assistant Director for Community Partnerships at Wake Forest University. And so I'm super excited today to be able to talk to you all about my passion of how we cultivate community academic partnerships with universities. Specifically from a framework of leveraging university resources for community impact. And I really like that angle. I think from my personal experience in working in higher ed, I don't think we've thought about our capital or the resources that we have as something that we could leverage for community members. And so that's the angle I like to go with. At any point, if folks have questions, feel free to stop me. I tell people all the time, I work in higher ed and we interrupt each other all the time with thoughts and ideas. And so I am not offended if you stop me to ask a question or ask me to go back over something. I want this to be as interactive and beneficial for you all as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about some types of university resources. Many of you may have some experience partnering with higher ed institutions before. For those of you that may not, I want to just talk about some common resources that universities would have available for nonprofit or faith-based organizations. We'll talk about some misconceptions when partnering with higher ed institutions. And then lastly, we'll talk about some best practices. So why partner with universities? I think it's always very clear why a community-based organization or a nonprofit or whatnot would want to partner with a university to receive support in some way. It's not always clear from the other side, like why a university would. And so a particular reason that I stay in this work and that I do this work is that community partnerships really help higher institutions achieve their mission of creating civically engaged citizens. And so I want you to have that, so as you're thinking about partnering with higher institutions, you're able to clearly articulate how their mission connects to the work or to the partnership that you are trying to embark upon. Universities are also places with a lot of resources that can be leveraged to increase nonprofit capacity and impact. And we're going to talk about some of those resources. So I usually camp them in 3 different categories. We got physical resources, we have volunteer resources, and then we have knowledge and academic resources.
Camry, looks like your screen is frozen. I'm sure she's just talking away too. I would, so while we're waiting on camera to rejoin, I would appreciate y'all feel free to message me or send me an email, give me feedback on the speakers or any other topics. I know we have some topics that we've already covered, but if there's content that you feel like, oh, I really need more of this and less of that, please let us know so that we can make sure that you get as much out of this as you possibly can.
Well, Dr. Matthews, I know one thing that I would be interested in just understanding, I guess, is constructing MOUs, because we're getting asked a lot. I mean, we should have them in place already, but normally, you just start doing the work. But how to structure those MOUs, just so everybody understands.
Yeah, so we do.
Going on.
That's good. So we do have a speaker from Brown Girl Enterprises, I believe, who will be, they work with nonprofit organizations, and they're going to talk about some of that, like the agreements and the board structure and those kinds of things. And I'm happy to share examples of MOUs that you could also review.
Great, thank you.
Those are definitely important with academic universities, especially.
Was I the only one that got dropped?
Yes, we were waiting on you to join. So you might have to go back kind of far. I feel like you probably were talking and we didn't hear a lot.
Gotcha.
So.
No, I am on campus. I don't know what's wrong. They're not prepared for us to come back to work, apparently. Okay. So let me share my screen, and folks, just let me know where we left off and we'll pick up. Did folks see? Where did
so you got a types of university resources, slide 4.
All right, perfect. Hopefully all is well and we won't shut down again. So we'll talk about 3 types of university resources. We'll start with physical, volunteer, and then we'll talk about knowledge and academic resources. So our physical resources, these are going to be really basic things like space. So the use of space for meetings, events, and conferences. Also funding. So a lot of higher ed institutions are moving towards providing small amounts of funding. So seed funding is what we've been calling it. For community-based projects, particularly ones that are new or directed at populations that we haven't been able to serve traditionally. And so be looking out for small, $1,000 to $5,000 grants from some institutions. Also, some larger grants, particularly around research and evaluation, might be available. For us at Wake Forest, I know this is really specific to the medical school. So on the university side, a lot of less funding around community-based research, but when you step into the medical side of it, lots of research funds on that side. And then lastly, tangible or in-kind resources. So a lot of folks often don't think about higher ed institutions in this particular way, but if you needed donations for clients or families that you're working with, right? You can partner with a higher ed institution to have students, to have faculty and staff collect those items and then be able to disseminate to the folks that you serve. Same thing with food. So a lot of campuses have started programs to be more sustainable and to eliminate food waste. And so things like Campus Kitchen allow food to be repurposed from our campus dining and be sent to community organizations to feed clients, to feed families. Same thing for campus gardens and things like that. If you want to provide fresh produce, fruits and vegetables to folks that you serve, look for campus gardens and other folks on campus to be able to provide those things. Next, we're going to talk about volunteer resources. This is, I think, the biggest one that most people think about when partnering with higher ed institutions, because we think about students having free time and being able to support our work. But there are a lot of different volunteer or human-based capital that you can get from institutions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between those. So you might be soliciting a one-time volunteer. This will be a volunteer who's going to help you on a specific day for a one-time need. So let's say that you're having a community event, you need volunteers to come help pass out particular items. That's a one-time volunteer. You might have project-based volunteers, and these are going to be groups of individuals that support a long-term project. So let's say you are interested in doing some sort of social media campaign to increase your profile, right? You might get a group of students to work with you over the course of the semester to produce this, this end of the semester project for you. The other one that I think a lot of folks are moving towards is what we call high skill volunteers. And so these are volunteers at university that have a sophisticated skill that a regular undergrad 19, 20-year-old might not have, right? So let's say you need a grant writer. You don't have funds in your particular budget to hire somebody to do that work. There are folks on campus whose job it is to look for grants, to look in grant databases. And that might be a faculty or a staff member. It oftentimes is not going to be an undergraduate student. But again, there are folks on campus who are interested in leveraging their particular skills or expertise in a volunteer capacity for a nonprofit. Part-time internships. These are going to be students, either undergrad or graduate, who are looking to gain professional experience and help with capacity building for your organization. When you're working with a higher ed institution, you want to be very clear about their internship structure. Some folks are doing internships for course credit, and those require a different level of oversight than a part-time volunteer intern who's just doing it to add something to their resume. So just be clear about that. Oftentimes, this is happening during the fall or the spring semester. So I saw Dr. Matthews also put in the chat that graduate students can conduct needs assessments for nonprofits. They also have organizations for medically trained Spanish interpreters. Yes. So think outside the box when you're thinking about volunteers. It's not just come help me clean out this closet, at my organization. There are translation services. There are business students who can help with the strategic plan. Business students who might be able to come and prepare taxes for your constituents or clients that you work with. So think outside the box of the traditional just sort the cans and help me clean out the closet. Summer interns, a lot of graduate students, particularly Divinity, social work, all of those folks are needing full-time summer internships and require hours. And those are full-time placements. So you can really get some extra support in the summer from graduate students and undergrads with full-time work. And then lastly, AmeriCorps Vista. So AmeriCorps Vista is not just a program innate to higher ed institutions, but a lot of large institutions are now starting to run AmeriCorps Vista projects. And what AmeriCorps Vista is, it's just like the Peace Corps, is just in the United States. And so they place workers at nonprofit organizations for full-time service And they are there to help you build capacity. It is free to the organization. There is a small cost share that organizations might have to cover. For us, it's like $1,000. But $1,000 is cheaper than paying for a full-time staff. And so when organizations are trying to expand, trying to, write grants or increase capacity, AmeriCorps Vista is a good person to help do that work if you don't have the funds yet to hire additional people. And then the last resource we're going to talk about is the knowledge and academic resources. And so the first is around research support and consultation. So if you are interested in asking a particular research question and working with a faculty member to answer that, or maybe a lot of times I see nonprofits needing help with program evaluation. So I have this program, CAM, but I'm not sure how effective it is. And I don't know how to do a pre and post test, and, funders want data and I don't know what to do. And so we can partner you with graduate students or with faculty who can help you come up with an evaluation or assessment plan for particular programs. Service learning courses are when you have a particular project that is going to align with a particular course. So all of the kids, particularly undergrads, maybe graduate students, will be taking one class. The teacher or professor will be teaching them particular concepts. While they're in the class, they are responsible for volunteering with your particular organization for a particular amount of hours to make sure that those learning concepts and things that they're learning in the classroom are being translated into their work. Academic partnerships is just a really basic way of saying sometimes you have a particular organization or program that's just going to align with a great department or program at the university. So for instance, if you are an organization in Winston that is serving folks living with HIV, Gilead would be a great academic partnership and office to work with on our campus. Your missions both align, you're both doing the same thing, and it just makes sense to share resources and collaborate. And then lastly, thinking about higher ed institutions as places where you can get speakers and trainings. So again, if there is a faculty member or a staff member who has a particular expertise around a topic, and you want them to come and talk to your organization or to the clients that you serve about something, it's a great way to get a speaker for a relatively no fee or cheap fee. The other thing is trainings. And so this has been particularly helpful for some of the nonprofits that I work with, particularly around diversity education. So I've had some nonprofits that have been tasked with kind of increasing the profile of people that they serve. And they didn't want to pay $3,000 for a consultant to come in and do diversity education training or send all of their staff members to a particular training that's $500 or $600 each. There are people on campus who would be willing to come out to your organization and do these trainings for you, right? If you need safe zone trainings to learn how to interact with the LGBTQ population, you need trainings around DEI. These are great institutions and great organizations to partner with to do that work for free. Any questions about resources? All right. The next thing we'll talk about just really briefly is just some common misconceptions when partnering with higher ed institutions and universities. The first is that the university's mission or priorities is going to neatly align with your organizations. So oftentimes folks are getting frustrated because I've come to Wake Forest University because I need support with this, and it doesn't seem like they care, or it doesn't seem like they want to work with me. Sometimes, the university or that organization or office might be interested in working with you. It's just that that is not a priority or that's not their focus area at the moment. And so we have to be okay with knowing that it might not neatly align initially. The second thing is that mutual benefits will be inherently known at the beginning of the partnership. So when thinking about building a partnership with institutions, sometimes you might have to work really hard to think about what are we all getting out of this? And it might not be something that's just inherent. You might have to really work through that together and just be willing to do that work and be honest. It's okay if the benefits outweigh one organization more than the other. We just want to make sure that everybody feels included and is involved from the beginning, and that we all know what each person is bringing to the table and also taking away from it. The next thing, which is really important, is around the academic calendar and then your timeline at your organization. So they are not always the same. So when working with higher ed institutions, we are on a semester-based calendar. And so if you're reaching out in the summer, you might not get anyone because folks are not there. And so just be aware that, if you're going to be looking for support from a higher ed institution, you want to make sure that you're thinking about when people are going to be there and when they're not, and then also high and low points in the semester. So at the end of December, when we're about to leave for Christmas break, people are taking exams, they're grading papers. That might not be a great time to initiate a new partnership or a project. We want to always consider capacity for both universities and for nonprofits or faith-based organizations. Just because organizations are bigger doesn't mean that there's always more capacity. And so, we want to respect that it might be a good fit for you to partner with the university, but they might not have capacity at that moment, or the person who does that work might not have capacity to take on an additional partnership. You want to think about the level of skill and intellect that you need for your volunteers or your interns. So if you need volunteers to come in with a specific level of knowledge, you want to name that at the beginning. That way, when they get there, you're not upset that your intern doesn't know how to work Google, or your intern doesn't know how to work a particular software that you have. So just be aware of that students, particularly undergrad and graduate, there's a difference in the knowledge that they have and the skills that they have. Partnerships are going to take a long time. They're not quick. They're not easy. It takes years to build relationships with folks and to get this work going. And then lastly, just to name, higher ed institutions are not foundations, and they don't always have a lot of monetary capital. And so that's something I'm always having to manage with some of the organizations that I work with, is they want to partner with Wake Forest, but they want to partner with Wake Forest to get money. And sometimes we have it and sometimes we don't. And sometimes I have access to it and sometimes I don't. And so we just want to make sure that we manage that. Even if it's a predominantly white institution, it doesn't always mean that they're going to have monetary money or capital to support a particular nonprofit. So just think about other ways that you can leverage resources outside of just monetary donations. Any questions so far? Okay. And the last thing we'll talk about briefly before we just open it up for just a conversation is just some best practices for folks when partnering with institutions. So the first is being really clear about the value proposition for everybody involved. So we want to make sure that you describe the mission and vision of your organization or your work really clearly. You also want to be clear about the need and the ask. So when you are trying to form a new partnership, you don't want to just be partnering just to partner. You want to make sure that you are clear, hey, I need this, or we are trying to do this, and this is where we fall short as it relates to capacity. This is where your office or your organization has the ability to help us. I had a meeting with a partner last week, and he was like, I want to partner with Wake. And so we met, and I was like, well, what do you need? And they didn't know. And so again, you want to just really be clear. The resources are there, but you got to think through, what do I need in this moment? And it's okay if you don't need anything from the organization in this moment and you're just reaching out to start building that relationship, but just be clear about that. Again, coming back to being able to articulate the benefits of the partnership, you want to talk about your timeline. So is this an urgent need? Is this a need that we can wait to work on next semester? Is this something we are planning for next year? So just be clear about the timeline in which you need support. And then determining capacity for projects on both sides. So does your organization have capacity to bring on interns? Does the university have capacity to supervise or manage those interns, right? We just want to be honest about capacity from the beginning so that we know what's required from each side. You want to take advantage of the low bar entry. So it is really easy to partner with higher ed institutions. They are almost willing to work with all types of organizations and nonprofits. As long as you can clearly connect what you do to some sort of college going behaviors or college functions, then you have a chance of developing a relationship with higher ed institutions, even faith-based institutions. I know sometimes it's like, I can only partner with the div school if I'm faith-based. No, you can partner with the business school, you can partner with the community engagement office. You can get interns who are not Divinity School students. So again, really easy to take advantage and get to know people and to get resources. Reach out to community engagement offices, departments, or even just a contact that you might have at a local university. Sometimes universities are complex. You can't figure out who does what, but I know somebody who works in admissions. And so I'm going to contact them to see if they can find the best person for me to engage with. And just get to know those people. Again, even if you don't have a specific need at the moment, it's better to go ahead and start building that relationship so that if a need comes up, you have that relationship, you can reach out and you can get the support that you need. You want to be on the lookout for new opportunities to partner. So we are experiencing this right now at Wake Forest, where we have had a presidential transition. So we have a new president. Oftentimes, a new leadership transition signals an openness to explore new relationships and partnerships. So if the school you're working with has a new dean, or anytime there's new blood, folks, it's time to realign and figure out how you can partner. Be on the lookout for new centers, departments, and other offices on campus as well. So don't just look for people transitions, but look for new initiatives and things like that that are happening at universities so that you can get plugged in. And lastly, you want to stay in the know about these things. And so the way that you do that, follow social media accounts for institutions that you want to work with or specific offices. Read articles about the local university. Try to get on people's listservs. A lot of institutions have these things. You just have to reach out and ask to be added. And that way you're getting information consistently and you know what opportunities are there and support is there for you and your organization. You want to be able to define success. So the goal of any partnership is for everybody involved to walk away with what they came to get. That is always the goal. Oftentimes this is hard if at the beginning of the partnership, we haven't defined what success looks like. It's going to be different for you and from the other folks that are involved, but it's a necessary conversation to have at the beginning. One, so that at the end of the project, we can make sure again that you got what you needed, but then also we can evaluate the effectiveness of the partnership. So again, just be thinking about that when you're thinking about what do I need and what am I asking for? It's like, if I got an intern, what would success at the end of the semester look like? What would that intern do for our organization? Two more best practices we'll go through. First, you want to create these stronger linkages. So oftentimes I see organizations that will work with a particular office on campus. Like they will get in with the Divinity School and they will stay there. But you want to, once you get in the door, try to expand to other parts of the university and try to bind your organization closely to the institution, not just to one particular area. So don't just look for interns in one particular school or look for resources because you're faith-based with just one particular area. Try to connect with the business school, try to connect with the general undergraduate office, just to make sure that you're linked in multiple places. Sometimes parts of institutions don't talk to one another. So sometimes there are things that are going on the undergraduate side that the div school might not know about, right? And so being plugged into all of those places will just mean that you're getting the information that you need, and we'll be able to reach out if you need support. And then lastly, you want to build strong ties to the institution and to people. I will say in both nonprofit world and higher ed, particularly around community engagement, there is a lot of turnover as it relates to staff. And so you don't want to just build a relationship with a staff person and then they leave the institution and you don't have the support that you need for your program anymore. So it might start with an individual and that's fine, but you want to make sure that you're building relationships with more than just one person in that office or more than just one person at that institution. So that when folks move out of the way or move on to different positions, that people still know what your partnership was, have some recollection or memory of it, and you're still able to get the resources and the support that you need. That was a lot. So I want to pause to see if folks have questions. We can also use this time if folks are thinking about partnering with institutions in particular ways and have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
While y'all are still thinking about your questions, I do want to add a couple of things to what Camry mentioned. So I've worked for a while, I guess for maybe the last 5 or 6 years, in the School of Medicine at UNC, and then now at Wake Forest. And the School of Medicine is also a great opportunity. And oftentimes the School of Medicine is separate from the undergrad campus. So she's talking about partnerships with undergrad campus, and School of Medicine is almost a completely separate institution. So, there's some kind of like internal politics that people just don't know about. Like, unless you work at the university, you don't know. Like, I worked at the hospital, then I had to get rehired for the undergrad campus, even though it was the same university. So the reason why I mentioned that is because on the medical side, that many of the faculty have to operate through grants. They support their salary through grants, and they have many grant opportunities. And many of them benefit from partnerships with community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, and they can put those organizations as partners into their budget and into their grant proposals. So some of the ways that I, as a researcher, have worked with organizations is, say we want to better understand the perspectives of people living with HIV and how they integrate faith into their lives. I write a grant to the National Institute of Health or whatever funding agency, and then I build a partnership with an organization and say, hey, you have the network of people living with HIV that I want to be able to reach and engage with, and you're a trusted partner. And so I would love to partner with you to think about, one, how can we write this grant together, and what are some questions that you think are the most important, and then then I can support maybe a staff member from your organization, support some of their salary in the grant, or we could pay some of your clients to participate in research, or we could co-sponsor an event with you where we'd pay for the rental fees and things like that. There's some opportunities there, I think, also on the financial end, that but that does come with relationships. So a lot of what Camry mentioned is like that initial kind of establishing relationships with faculty members who maybe have research that aligns with the work that you're doing. Maybe starting off with some panel discussions or something where you join a panel, and then that kind of leads into work down the road. And of course, grant opportunities are very highly competitive. So you may apply for 5 different grants and only get one, but then that one grant could support 5 years of funding at $3 to $5 million. So, it's just like high risk, high reward kind of thing. So I just wanted to mention that. And then the other way that I have worked with, I have a consulting company as well. So and I think similarly, mine is a for-profit, but nonprofit organizations can also serve as consultants. And so you could be added into as subcontractors, or added into grants as contracting work on these projects to provide expertise on different topics. So those are ways too. And then Wake Forest is a part of a Center for AIDS Research. I know I've seen Mark Cassidy on a couple of calls that I've been on with the UNC Center for AIDS Research, and that UNC is an hour and a half away from us, but it's it serves the whole state. So there's a lot of centers for AIDS research throughout the country, and especially in the South, that work with universities and organizations across the state. So even if they're not in your city, you could still reach out to them, because there's opportunities for partnership and funding that way as well.
Camry, I have a question. And first, thank you for your time and expertise. That was beautiful. You had mentioned trainings that universities may be willing to do for free at times. And I wonder if you could give any advice about where to start, especially in larger universities seeking out those types of things. So it's just not contacting every department.
Is there a particular topic that you're thinking about?
Well, we've done, like a lot of places lately, and I'm just the phrase of this social justice becoming kind of the thing to do these days. We've taken some serious steps within our agency to do this work around diversity and DEI issues and belonging, because we have to. We just can't we can't fulfill our mission in any way without taking that work deeply. And as a sidebar, I was naively surprised at how difficult it's been. It's been really unnerving for so many people. And so I trust that means the work is real. But I'm interested in diversity aspects, EDI trainings, that sort of thing. We bring in various people, and it's often better rather than using our own resources. I think people are more comfortable sometimes bringing a stranger in,
Yeah, so I would say for most institutions, most of them at this point should have an Office of Diversity and Inclusion. If they do not, they will soon have one, because that's just where we're headed. And so I would say that is a great place to reach out to. Most of those offices will have someone who's pretty high up, like a dean or associate vice president for diversity. But then if you look down the org structure, they'll have directors or program coordinators. And those would be the folks who are probably going to be the ones that would be able to lead the trainings or facilitate them for you. Yeah.
I think also offices of community engagement, you could also look at center, like health equity centers, if they have health equity or social justice centers or racial equity centers. And they may have multiple, so it depends on how large the university is. So I know Duke has the Office of Racial Healing and something else. And then they have the Office of Community Engagement, and then they have the Office of Clinical and Translational Science Institute. And then and all of those could probably do a DEI training. So, I would start looking at centers, like any kind of centers or offices at the universities that have a specific focus on DEI or whatever topic you're interested in. Those are probably going to be more likely to respond than a faculty member.
Good. Thank you for that. It occurs to me just in collaborative terms that it could open doors for agencies that we work for to go into those places and talk about diversity, especially as it affects HIV issues, right? So
Yes.
definitely a two-way street possibly there. So thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Doctor.
So I want to address again, Will Francis, you brought up the MOU. Some of that, I think in collaboration with universities, after you set up the initial conversations and you've developed relationships and then they've gotten to the point of like some funding for a project, MOUs usually happen when you have a contract. And a lot of times what will happen is the university may have a draft of an MOU that they could supply for you, but they really are looking for you as an organization to draft out like your scope of work. What are the things that you have agreed to in that relationship or in that project? And so outlining specific kind of deliverables that you are going to be, providing for that project, and then timelines, and maybe even geographic area or like who the people are from your organization who will be working on that project. I think those are the things that are typically included in MOU, and then they will send it to their legal team for them to review. And then you definitely want to have, and then you may even have a pay schedule on that MOU as well. So you definitely want to have your legal team review it as well, or someone. And if you don't have a legal team, which I think a lot of us don't, you can probably even go to the law school, and the law students, law clinics will review the contract for you as an independent third party. And then, so is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's why I thought the presentation was so good, because you wouldn't necessarily think about a law school or a business school. You sort of think in, for me, say the church, a Bible college, or, ITC or something like that, versus Morehouse or Emory for public health, different things of that nature. So that just really opened up my mind about how we could establish some relationships and really give us a broader capacity without it just killing any type of budget that we may have. So that was a really good presentation. It just opened up my eyes and, expanded the box considerably.
Good.
Law schools are really great for clinics around contracts. A lot of law schools are doing clinics around expungement. So if you have clients or folks that are looking for that service, if you are trying to establish a 501c3 and you need folks to look at that paperwork, law clinics are great for that.
And I would say even it's a best practice to just have a relationship with the law school because there's so many documents that are, especially as running a business, you're running a nonprofit, but it's a business. And so, you're constantly reviewing and negotiating different relationships and partnerships. And so having someone who understands the work you're doing, there's different types of law also. So, that's why you want to have a relationship with, because they can definitely even give you advice on fundraising. I've worked with a lawyer on fundraising ideas and investment and also thinking about writing up contracts, and then anytime I review, I'm working on an MOU with an organization or with a university, I have them review it, and then they can make edits. And they're definitely
like Ryan White funds like the HOPPA portion as well as like legal aid. And then when there's an issue between a HOPPA participant, legal aid can't defend them. So it's sort of like, then don't get funded by the same organization. So it gets kind of crazy. So being able to sort of go outside of that network, I think is really like, it's really good information for us to help our clients that may have, legitimate gripes with funders and different things of that nature. So that this is good stuff. It's
pretty popular right now. So we're seeing a lot of law students help with that, with eviction.
Yes.
They're also terrible at advertising. Like out of all the people that do community-based work, they're the worst. And so you will have to reach out to them and say, when is this clinic? When are y'all doing? And they'll give you the dates, but they are not good at publicizing it or telling folks that it's available. So you'll have to do some digging.
So from y'all's perspective, what should a partnership with the university within the community look like? And how do you think that you'll be able to incorporate this into your vision planning?
I definitely think it should be a mutual benefit. I think they talked to, Bishop Allen talked about that, where it should be a mutual benefit for both entities. We have a similar program, I don't know, where we distribute produce to our clients. And so a lot of the produce that we distribute was going to waste. And so we aligned with TSU with their extension program, their Shop, Cook, and Eat program. And so we were able to get a grant for telephones and for Wi-Fi service last year specifically. And so we were able to implement that program during the pandemic, which kept our clients busy, number one, and it gave them information on how to still shop, cook, and eat on a budget within the confines of the pandemic. And that really helped us out a lot. Doing something that was real practical, but using, and it was free for us because the program itself, the clients, was Ryan White funds. And so TSU did it free for us, and it's continuing this year. So that was a real good partnership that's a benefit for them reaching out to the community and a benefit for our clients.
I'd have to say from our end, Greensboro, North Carolina is really rich with colleges and universities. But I realized through this conversation that I think that our agency tends to just deal with things as they kind of come down the pike. You know, we have either having speakers in or being asked to go speak to different groups. We have HIV testing on college campuses. Lately, we've really been kind of mining North Carolina A&T University, also in terms of finding staff, you know, and kind of nurturing folks through that rather than waiting for people to find us to really go out and seek out people who are good at this work. So needless to say, service learning has been a part of our experience too, and volunteers, although I tend to, you know, there's a lot of, well, here's a required, students are required to volunteer somewhere and here's a list of places. To me, I think we do better when we wait for somebody whose heart is attracted to our work particularly. So I recommend for myself anyways, I think a bit of screening there really does help, you know. But to say again, thank you. It's kind of made me think just more intentionally about our larger mission and vision, and to make sure we're including universities within that, right? There's much more there.
Yeah, and thinking about ways to incorporate it. And so like if you're planning out your year and you have all these programs and things, how do you leverage the resources from the universities to amplify the work that you're doing? And, you know, because a lot of times the universities have statewide connections as well. So I know through my work, you know, working at a university, I have a relationship with the governor's office. And so, you know, it's not just the university, right? We work directly with the statewide effort. So, you know, that think about it that way. It's not just, trying to get local kind of volunteers, but also how do you amplify that and expand that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've also just lately we've been doing more and more work around PrEP and the diversity issues that go on there, and the really criminally overweighted use of PrEP among white populations, and really trying to get it into African American populations. And within A&T, for instance, we've doing more work there and talking to students who may be hesitant to get tested for HIV or get on PrEP because of their parents finding out and that kind of thing. So really universities are where a lot of our work is, just in terms of prevention too, and getting conversations going and normalizing conversations around HIV and STIs and sex in general. So.
I just want to add something from a partnership. It's always a good thing to partner with the higher entities like universities, because from our experience with UCF, University of Central Florida, we had a great experience with that university, because we were invited to do a presentation at the a conference for the social work department, and we present our work in the community, how we impact the community. And on returns, I needed a recommendation letter for a grant. I was able to reach out to that professor. She was able to write me a grant right away, I mean, a letter right away. And without that connection, I would not get that letter. So, and also I was able to invite her to be one of the speakers at our board meeting. So all these connections are really grateful and beneficial to both of us. So it's always good to get that connection.
So I don't think we're kind of wrapping up for the last couple of minutes, but I do want to challenge you all to kind of brainstorm and feel free to add it to the Google Drive if you want, or the Google Classroom, and I can review it and give you feedback, or even think about connections within our network at the Divinity School and how we can help you all. But I do want to challenge you all to look at your kind of next year. Now is the time to be planning for 2022. I know a lot of people wait until 2022 to start planning, but now is the time to start planning for that and thinking about, what are some ways that brainstorm on what are some ways that you can kind of integrate university partnerships and integrate some of the nuggets that you got from Bishop O.C. Allen, and maybe also brainstorming about who do you know in your network that you could reach out to start to begin those conversations. And again, we are more than happy to help make any kind of connections as well. Any last thoughts? All right, well, this is a great first Learning It Together cohort workshop. We appreciate your active participation and your active listening. Thank you so much, Camry, for joining us as a guest speaker. We won't see you for another couple of months, but please, we will be reaching out to you, because I know that there's a couple of connections with some of our other funded partners that I would like to make with some of you all. Well, actually, every one of you will benefit from some kind of connection that I'll be making for you. But also, as you're brainstorming and thinking about the lessons that you've learned from this workshop, please feel free to reach out and see if we can be a resource in any way. All right, have a good evening, everyone.
All right, thank you. Blessings.
Bye.